All right, good morning and good evening, everyone. This is Rakesh here. If you can, hey Zafar, I just spoke to them. I'm really sorry for that. I just spoke to them. Yes. I just saw your mail and I called and spoke to them. Thing is that Ravi is out of station, so that's the problem. Let's just give me a few seconds. Like, I mean, once the class is done, I'll again follow up with them and find out what is the reason for this. All right, Naveen, you can start recording the session. Sandeep, you have any questions? Okay, even you are not able to connect to ECC. Okay. Okay, ECC configuration was not done on the SAP logon pad. Okay, so that you can do Sandeep because you will have them on your email. So if you just go to the logon pad, right, you can right click and say add new entry. Just go to the next step here. Then you can give description like ECC 1, 2, 3 ECC. 1 is already there. So you can give the application server name, instance number, and once you give these two, you can just directly click on finish, and you can log into that one.
But I don't have that application server. It is not there in the email actually.
Application server is not mentioned in the email.
Yeah, it's not mentioned.
Okay. Okay, let me follow up. Like, Naveen, if you are listening to this, uh, please get these things done. Do not delay. Right? I'll catch up with you guys once the class is done. I'll call you back, Naveen, Ravi, and Ganesh. I'll talk to you. Right, Sandeep.
Thanks.
I'll
Yeah.
try to follow up with it. Yeah, thanks. All right. So yesterday we are talking about the query transformation, and right, let's continue with the query transformation. And yesterday there was another question on this one, the options in a template table. So there are many. So I'll walk you through them as well. Just give me a few seconds. Okay, just give me a second. Right, so the other server that we are looking at has some problem in logging in, so we'll just go ahead and work on another connection now. So we will continue looking at the query transformation, and once the query transformation is done. So yesterday there was a there was a question to talk about. One second. Yesterday there was a question to talk about the temporary tables and the options on that, and the permanent tables and options. So I'll just go through that one, and once we are done with that, we will go and continue with the remaining transformations. So I'm just creating a new job for query transformation. One second. Alright, so next let us go and create a data flow, df underscore qt, data flow for query transformation. So it's already there, so that's name conflict. So df underscore qt underscore demo. Now go to your source. We already did this part yesterday. So I'm just taking promotion facts table and I'm making at source, and the lookup table to do a join. And from the right hand side tool palette, pick your query transformation and connect it with your source tables. Right, so we spoke about schema out and schema in and yesterday, and we also spoke about the mapping tab. So what are the different options that we see in the mapping tab? We spoke about it. Today we will continue looking at the rest of the options. So the second tab that we have here is the select tab. So select distinct rows. So when we select this, even though the source has duplicate data, right? So if the source has the duplicate data, the system will take care of those duplicates. So when I say there are two types of duplicates, please keep this in mind. We might get this as a data migration consultants, right? So we will definitely face this issue of this data. So let us say if there is a table. I'm just taking some small example here. If this is employee number, name, salary, and designation, right? If I have some records like this, so sorry. So if I have some records like these are my exact duplicates. So in those cases, if you have data like this, what this data services query transformation select distinct will make sure that the duplicate record will not go into the target system. So what it will do is, in the backend, every record when it gets fetched, it will go and check in the target system if that particular record is already existing. If it is existing, then it will go and update the if it is existing, it will not go and update that record. It will skip that record and it will go for the next record. And if the next record is not present in the target table, then it will go and insert that one. So distinct rows, you select the distinct rows and you avoid duplicates with this one if you have exact duplicates. But there is also a possibility that you have some potential duplicates like this. So if I have data like this, but somebody who just logged in, can you please go on mute? Appreciate that, thank you. Right, if you look at the data like this data set is called potential duplicates, right? So how will the system understand that if this day is a duplicate? So if somebody knows that, that's fine, but if not, I'm just trying to explain this one. So the system will take the snapshot of the first row and compare with the remaining rows, right? So it will take a snapshot of the first row and try to compare with the remaining rows, and if it does match an exact fit, so it will identify that as a duplicate, right? So that is how the actual system works in the backend. But now if this snapshot is not equal to this snapshot and is not equal to this snapshot, but if you look at this data, you can understand that this is the same data repeated in different columns and spread across different rows, right? So if you manually go and look at the data, you can identify these potential duplicates, but it will be a biggest challenge in data migration world, right? To identify these kind of potential duplicates. So we'll see some scenario using base match transformation, how we can handle these potential duplicates as we proceed. So I'm just giving you a heads up on these duplicates as we are speaking about the duplicate records. So select distinct allows us to ignore the duplicates. So iteration happens. So let us say if there are 1000 records within that table, so 1000 into 1000 minus 1 iterations will happen on the system cache. So these many iterations will happen to look at these records. So first record will be picked, it will compare with all the remaining records. The second record will be picked, it will compare with all the remaining records, and the third, and so on till my 1000th record. So those many iterations happen. So which means your performance is going to hit, right? So your performance will slow down. But generally on 1000 record size it will not happen, but if it is a huge volume and you are trying to select distinct on that one, then definitely it will go and hit the performance. So this is select distinct, which will help us to identify the duplicate records and ignore them. So the from tab. So in the previous versions 3.x there used to be two tabs. One is your from tab and the second one is your outer tab. Right. So in the from tab it shows from which table the data is coming from. So whatever the tables that you see in the schema N, you'll see the same tables here. Okay, and then the join rank. So this you will see quite often, the join rank in most of the transformations. So when I define join rank for this as 10, this as 20, so when the job gets executed, right? So first the job gets executed, it then goes to the data flow execution, and within the data flow, the one with the less rank gets picked up first, and then the one with the next rank. So first 10 gets picked up first, and then the second one, and then it goes to the query transformation and then to the target table. So you can define the order in which these can be picked within the query transformation. So somebody in my previous batches asked me like why I can't go for the value here like 1 and 2. Right, so I can go and do that, but later in future if I want to add something else to my data flow and I want to change the ranks, then I have to go and change it right from here. Right side, I just give them some buffer, so 10 and 20 is not a bad thing, so we can give it like this. And next one, the cache. So how does this query transformation utilize the cache? So first one you have here is automatic. So when it is automatic by default, the system will decide like if it has to go for a cache, if the volume of data is good, more, so it can go and utilize the cache, or if it is not required, there will be some temporary cache that is utilized by data services, and if it is that much, if the data will fit in that temporary cache, so data services will execute that. So in those cases it will go as no, and if the data volume is more it will go as yes. So let us better keep it as automatic. So this is the from tab, and the join pace here that you see is an outer join in the previous version. So this join pairs actually helps us to do the joins. Inner join, outer join, and left outer join. So you must have read about these things in your schools, like type of joins, like union, intersection, and so on. Right. So let us say this one is table A, and this one is table B. So when I say A union B, right, so this is an inner join, right? Select star from A, where parent ID from A is equal to parent ID from B, right? So you do this one. So union is you take the data from both the records. Intersection is the common data between A and B, right? So only A is left outer join and the common records between B. and right outer join is only B data with the common records from A. So these are the types of join: inner, lefter, right outer, right, and left outer joins. So we can achieve them here. So uh, here, if you look at the join types, we have left outer join and inner join. You don't have right outer. So if you want to get a right outer join, you need to just switch the position of the tables. So if in the left source, if I go and look at the facts and the right table, I go and look at the promotion. So general inner join is defined here, right? So if I just click on this three dots that you see here, so if I click on this, it will take me to the editor. So it says the promotion facts dot promotion ID is equal to the promotion lookup dot promotion ID, right? So here you can go and say left outer join. So if I say left outer join, this will become my left outer source and this will become my inner source, right? If I want to make this as my left outer source, right? So if I want to do a right outer join, technically, I'll go and switch my table. So I'll just say remove join, and here I will go and take this as my left outer source, select the diff join type, and change my right outer join. So you can see this graphical representation here if you're trying to do an inner join or outer join. So you can look at this one. If it is a simple inner join, you can also do that using query transformation. So in the previous versions, sorry, in the previous version you used to have a separate tab called outer join and 3.x. So you used to do that one there, but now it is clubbed here. The next tab here is a where tab. So where tab, it will propose me a join condition if I ask the system to. So if I just click on propose join condition, it will pick the common columns from both the tables and it will give me the join condition. Or if you want to do the same join condition, you can go and say promotion facts ID is equal to the promotion ID. Right, you can just drag and drop the columns and make them a join condition. So you can also specify more than one join condition here, or let me put it this way, you can specify more than one condition here by using and or operations. So if you have a conditional like either this one has to be satisfied or that one has to be satisfied, you can proceed, you can use or operation. But if you want both the conditions to be satisfied, you can use an AND operation. And here you can say print flag is not null. So here what I mean to do is the join condition should satisfy and also this one should not be null. So in those cases only you get the records, relevant records. So you can propose a where condition. So where condition is used for both filters and joins. So these are the two different activities that you can do, right? You can also call in functions on top of these if you want to by clicking on the functions button. If you want to utilize any of the functions, you can utilize them. The next tab that you see here is a group by tab. So group by tab is nothing but you put the data into different buckets using a group by function. So let us say if I have a postal department data and I want to do a quick search within the data. So what I will do a group by on the postal code. So I dump all the relevant addresses to that particular postal code into a bucket and I try to do a quick search within the bucket. So that will help me to identify. So rather than searching across 1 million records, I can put them into 10 buckets and I can search quickly within that bucket for that particular ID. So even my search time will go down, right? So this is where we can do that group by activity. So here, if I'm using all the columns, so what are the columns? So one blind rule here that we need to remember is what are the columns that we mentioned in the schema out. All of those columns should be present in your group by, right? So you should get all the columns into your group by. So if you don't want to, have all the columns here. I'll show you what to do next. So this is, I call all the columns, and next go and validate. So it will not throw an error. The moment I remove one column from here and say validate, it will throw an error saying that invalid where group by clause. So it says that this particular column was not found in the group by clause. All the output columns is either must be in the group by clause or inside an aggregate function like minimum, maximum, count, and sum. So that makes sense, right? So if I call all the columns into a group by, so it gets within into a bucket, right? If I don't call one particular column, like revenue, so if I put all the data into a bucket based on the quarter, and if I don't get the revenue column into that bucket, so what I mean to understand is what is the average, right, of the revenue for this quarter, or what is the minimum revenue, what is the maximum revenue, or what is the count of this individual revenues that were generated. So it should be present in an aggregate function. So to correct this one, I removed this column. So go to the mapping tab, and here you can say max of this particular column and validate this one. Then the system will identify that there are no errors. So just keep this in mind. What are the columns? New output columns are the columns that you don't pull them into the group by tab should go with the aggregate functions. So if you want to know the aggregate functions, you can click on functions and you can see them here. So average, count, count, distinct, max, sum, and minimum. So these are the functions. So your output column, whatever is not in the group by tab, should be present in one of these columns. So if you miss by chance, if you miss any column, to drag and drop any column in the group by tab, so that will be displayed as an error message when you are validating. And before you run your job anyways, you will validate that, and if you find that error, invalid group by clause, you know what to do. So you just try to look at the columns here and columns here and try to identify which column is not present in this group by tab that is present in the schema out. You pick that column and go to the mapping tab and give a aggregate function, and that issue will be resolved. So if you look at the resource utilization, the backend execution time for this job, so this also happens in a longer period, because if you look at this option, so let us say I have a data set, right, an employee data set with 4 major regions, north, east, south, and west. And now I'm trying to put this data, the common data, into different buckets. Now what it will do, it will try to search with first record with all the remaining records, identify relevant catch, and it will go into one bucket, then the second, third, fourth, and so on. So multiple iterations. It is not just you're picking the data from the source table and dumping it into the target. You are actually doing multiple iterations on the source table itself to make sure that you achieve what you get, right? So this is a resource utilization activity. Where condition. So here, if I go and apply more number of filters, right, for every record, this condition. So when it passes through the query transformation, if you look at this, when the data pass through the query transformation, every single record will pass through that one. So when it passes through, it will go and check for each and every condition that you specify. Right? If you are applying filters, it will go and check for each and every record. It will go, okay, this column. Then let us say I have another filter condition saying that weak ID is not null. So it will again go for the second condition. So when I'm doing a join here, right, so a where condition, so this is utilizing more number of resources too. And if I'm trying to join between a table that has 100 records, and let us say this one has 10 records. So how many iterations it will be there? 100 into 10 iterations, because as the job executes, right? So this table's data, both these records will be brought into the system cache, right? So I think you guys remember what we spoke about this. If not, I'll just try to repeat what happens in the backend. So just keep this in mind. So as we proceed, this is most important for us because if you keep this in mind, you can design a code with a proper optimized code. So performance tuning will be done automatically if you do this, if you just keep this in mind. Right, so this is my job and this is my system cache. Right, when I connect these two tables and try to load that into another table using query transformation. So when I execute the job, what will happen? So the data from both the tables. So when I execute the job, data from both the tables will go and sit in the system cache first. The first thing that it will do, and it will go and sit in the system cache. Right, so this data goes and sits here, and this data goes and sits here. And now, whatever the join condition that you specify in the query transformation, based on that, the iterations will happen. So if you are trying to do a normal inner join, it will pick the record from here and join with this record. So for every record that is present here, it will try to identify the common record. So let us say if this table has 1000 records and this table has some 100 records. So how many iterations will happen within the system cache? 1000 into 100, right? Pretty much close to 1 million, right? 1 lakh records, sorry. So these many iterations will happen within the system, and then based on the satisfactory, based on the condition that we give in the where condition, where tab, and based on how it gets satisfied, those records are pushed onto the target table. So if you look at the system cache, how many records are there? This 1000 is pulled in, then this 100 is pulled in, plus 1000 into 100 iterations are happening, and then again it has to capture the target output set that is pushed from the system cache into your target table. So just imagine if you're trying to do a join between 1000 and 100 records. So this much system cache utilization is done. So keep this in mind and just think about it. So each and everything that you do here is going to utilize the system cache. So if you know that you have less RAM on your system and doing all these activities in one single data flow will hit your performance. So you better utilize that in multiple data flows. The reason why I'm saying multiple data flows is so if you are done doing like all the operations within, you can do 100 odd operations or 100 odd business rules within a single data flow. But now if you look at the diagram here, right, this one, right, so this, once the job execution is done, so the data gets flushed from the system cache into your target table, which releases the system cache. So you can go ahead and do the remaining activities on this table in the subsequent data flows, right? So that's what I'm trying to explain. So group by and then order by, if you want to do an order by. So order by is nothing but you sort the data in ascending order or a descending order. So sometimes you want a sorted input data to improve the performance, right? So if you have the data sorted, then you can easily go and compare this with another data set that has the data, and you can do a quick comparison, and this will try to improve the performance. Again, on a larger data set, it will try to improve the performance, but sorting itself will take some time on the source data sets, right? Next one, the advanced tab. So if you look at the advanced tab, this talks about the performance tuning options here. So it says run distinct as separate process because the system knows that when I say select distinct, so first record will get you compared with all the remaining records, and then it will identify the duplicate. So if that is taking time, you're running this as a separate process. So you must have I mean, you must be knowing about the backend threads and the process that will handle the task. So if you look at a system, right, even the server on which I'm working, so this is handled by some backend processes, and these processes will run on some threads. So when I execute something, or when I do a transaction, or when I operate my system, so that whatever I'm trying to do, so it goes onto a process, and that process will be on 3 or 4 threads that will be supporting on the backend. So these threads, if they get overloaded, it goes to second process, and then it gets extended to the threads. So here I'm trying to run distinct as a separate process, so that as the query transformation runs, this will go and occupy a separate space to run. Likewise, my group by, my joins, my order by. So if I'm trying to do a complex join here, like join multiple tables, right? So 3 to 4 tables at the same time, and I'm trying to, join using multiple conditions, then that's going to utilize a lot of system resources. So I can run this as separate process. So run join as separate process. So I can utilize these options to improve the performance. And the last option that you have here is find option. So I can do a quick find if I want to search how many IDs are there. So I can just click on find, and it will show you on both my schema, input schema. So you can see this one, my input schema, and also my output schema. So as I move my mouse pointer, they get highlighted. So you can see them here, right? Both my input and output schemas. I can go and look at, do a quick search. So when I'm searching in that, I can just restrict that to my input schema, right? Or to my output schema, or I can search in both. So a quick search, right? You can do a quick search of the columns here. So as we saw the input schema, you can just go and click on find. So you can also go to this option find here and do a quick search. Then elements types. So what are the different types of objects that will be, elements that we'll be checking here? So schemas, which means this one. Then nested schema for XML, functions, all schemas, unmapped columns. The columns which are not mapped are identified by the pipe symbol, primary keys, all unmapped columns, simple columns, then simple primary key, simple error. So let's simply go for all types, right? Element types, all types, and where you want to search. So this is where you want to search with this particular string. So it goes into different things. One is the name of the column in schema out, then the description. Here you find the descriptions column, so which talks about the description of this particular column. Then you have the type, which is nothing but here, data type. Then mapping is this tab where you talk about the mapping rule, and also it talks about this mapping tab here. And next, if you look at this one, it selects from. So this is my from, and you see this one, this is outer join, right? So this outer join is there in the previous 3-point text, but this was not removed here. So you can still see it in the find tab. So outer join, then group by, order by, and you can go and say all properties. So you can do a quick find. The next one is what? Find and replace. So you also have a drop down here, find and replace, with the same options. So I can say identity, find ID and replace with identity in only my output schema, and just listen replace. So you see all these columns there, names are changed. So if you want to do a bulk update on the column names, you can, or change on the metadata, you can just go and click on quickly find them and replace them. So I'm trying to undo this one, right? So replace all, and it will go and replace my identities with IDs. So this is what you can do in find. So these are the options that we have in a query transformation. Sorry. So on a simple note, query transformation can do a number of activities, but on a simple note, what we will do, we'll pick the columns that we require from both the source tables, right? So I will add to the output schema and go to the go to the where tab and say where promotion ID from one table is equal to the promotion ID from the second table. And if you want the data to be sorted, so there can be so many options, but or not all the time you will be using all the options. So earlier we are discussing about all possible options that we see, but on a generic note, you will, when you are trying to join two tables, you will go and say use a where condition between the two tables, and if you want the or data to be sorted, you can order by. And going to the mapping tab, if you want any serial number to be created, so you can just go and say row number integer, and you can populate that with the function generate row number of. Right, validate the query transformation, no errors found. Then right click and execute the job. Alright, shows an error. So it says data flow Qt load table DS target. Oops, sorry, I did not connect this here. Validate, no errors found. So it's always good to validate the jobs before you execute them, so that if you have any errors, you can easily identify them and fix them before you actually run. So we ran into one more error, and this says probably a primary key violation, right? Primary key violation. So what does it mean by a primary key violation? It is not able to insert a duplicate record into a column which has a primary key on it. So this has a primary key on this one, so it's already there, promotion ID, so I just deleted this one. Now you go and rerun this job, so it should successfully execute now. So as you practice, if you get these errors, please try to capture them in an Excel and try to go through them. So if you get the same error again, you have an answer ready for it. So now this execution is done, and right, so now this execution is done and the job is successfully completed. Now if I look at the data, so it's a join between these two tables, this table and this table. I did a join and I sorted them on this ID. So if you promotion ID, so if you look at this data, the data is in a sorted order. So first it is 2s, and then it 3s, 4s, 5s, and 6. So this is how you can use a query transformation on a simple node. The next question that we had yesterday, yeah, so that's a good question, Sandeep. If I accidentally delete this transformation, so without saving, you have a question, option called before you save, you can go and say recover last delete, and you can connect it back to your other nodes. So this you can achieve it. You can do a quick delete, a quick option called right click, and you'll get it like recover last delete. All right. Yeah. So that one, and the next question I think probably from Sandeep that we have. So this is the path help.sap.com/BODS. So you can go and search for what are the documents that you need. You have ample number of documents there. So you have documents on architecture, you have documents on release notes. So this is a complete portal where you can go and access. So you have something called as designer guide. So this is my master guide. I can go into that one. There will be something called as yeah, designer guide, right? So this is the one. You click on this one, and yeah, you can go with this PDF. So it has an end-to-end information. Probably, if once you look into this PDF, so you will understand that the things that I'm covering are like the major ones that need for you to survive. But if you want to get an in-depth knowledge on the tool, so you can go through this PDF whenever you get time. So probably a bit lengthy PDF though, some 1,000 odd pages, but yeah, that will really help you because for one of my project requirement, I was just checking the feasibility by reading that option here, and I understood a lot. So there is a lot of things that we can uh, find out from here. So I'm just taking you to the target table options. So I'll just refer it to the document, and from here we can look at the job and compare that. So yesterday I was looking at a different version, 3.2 version, and that one, it's there in the page 176. So let's go and look in this one. If not, I'll open that one for you and I'll walk you through the options, different options that we have. I think it should be here. Right, just give me a second. Right, I think I missed it somewhere. Just let me check here. Sorry for that. Just give me a second. All right, so I'll just walk you through this. I'll not waste much time, but please, cross-check them with the document. Right, so if you look at the target options, first one is target. So to get into the screen, you need to click on this table and you get into the target. So if you look at the target, so first make port. So if you make this one as a port, so what are the tables, right? So if you look at this diagram here, so the objects that you have in this particular data flow is these two source tables, one target table, and a transformation. So when the job gets executed, so it will go and look at the options here first. What are the options that you selected? And then based on that, it will go and pick the tables and the target tables and the transformations. So now if you look this one and select this as a port, so it will select this particular table as an embedded table within that data flow. So just to improve the performance, you can make this target table as an embedded data flow. So once you select this, so sometimes for different table, different source systems, right? So different targets like Oracle, these options will be enabled, but not for SQL. You can get this entire information on this PDF. So I'm just going through an overview here. Next one is the options, right? So if you look at the options, you get how many rows we can commit. So commit per 1000 rows. So once 1000 rows are sent into the target system, so those it will be followed by a commit statement. So for every 1000 records that you are pushing into the target table, you are doing a commit. So next option you have is delete data before loading. So if you want to delete the data before you load the data into the target table, or if you want to do a fresh data load, you can go with this delete data before loading option. And this is for to drop and recreate the table. So if you are doing a drop and recreate, the data will also be lost. So there's no need for you to go for delete data. So on the general note, if you look at this column comparison, there are two mechanisms in which the column comparison is done. Compare by name and compare by position. So when I'm doing this column comparison, right, so when I'm trying to insert data from the here to here, so it will do a comparison by name to name or by position to position. So you can keep that by compare by name as default, and number of loaders. So by default it is 1, but if I make this as 3 loaders, what it will do is it will improve the performance, right? So here if I make this as 3 loaders, so 3 parallelly, 3 loaders will be loading 1000 records into my target system, and after every 1,000 records it will go and do a commit, right? So that is a way in which we can do a quick load into the target table. So by default the number of loader here is 1, but here if I make it as 3, so 3 loaders will run parallelly and push 1,000 records into the target system, and once 1,000 is done, it will give a commit hit onto the database, right, and it will go on. So use overwrite files. So if there are just in a case, right, you are trying to read some data from a source table, and that is not a particular record is not correct, so you want to capture that in an error report. So you can use this as overwrite file as yes, and this will be the text that is created in the file format will be the write data format, right? So generally it is kept to no, but if in case you want to know like which record is getting kicked off, and while writing into the target, not all the records from your source will be written into the target. So just in case if you want to catch them, you can go with the error handling options, and you can make overwrite file as yes, and then this thing. Next one, update control. So when you are doing an update on the target system, you can use the input keys. So based on the keys that are coming in from the input, you can go and make it as yes and do a comparison and update on the target columns. The update column keys, right? So you can keep this as yes or no. Then you have something called as an autocorrect load, right? So this is something like a delta mechanism, right? When you're trying to load the data, so you're not using any comparisons or any operations or any transformations here. So when you set this to yes, autocorrect load as yes, so what it will do is it will try to insert a record into the target table, and if that record is present, it will ignore that record and it will go and fetch the second record. So this enables you not to have duplicates on your target table. Autocorrect load will enable you not to have any duplicate data. Then allow merge or upset, right? So when I'm doing auto correction, then only the allow merge will be possible. So when I'm setting this to yes, then you'll have an option to merge the data from different sets, and you want to make it as a single set. Then ignore columns with null values. You can give them as 2 single quotes here, or you can type null, right? So these records will get kicked off. Ignore columns with null, you can keep this as yes, or if you have some special characters, you can just keep a / here, then you can just keep this as yes to ignore columns with nulls. Then include transaction. So this is your control transaction. So if you say include transaction, so this includes the transactions like insert, update, and delete, right? So the SQL transactions on your table, and you can keep the order of them. Then miscellaneous, use nvarchar for varchar columns if it is supported in the database. So if you are using varchar in your here, right, if you are using varchar here, so these varchars will be converted to nvarchar when it is pushed onto the backend database. You can keep this one. So these are the different options that you see. So these are the different options that you see. So especially when a data flow gets executed, right? So when a data flow gets executed, you will, you will see. Sorry, it will first go to the target table options, and from here it will start picking them. Now see, if you I changed something here and I made something to yes, and the rest of the options are gone, like preload command, postload command, everything is gone. So it depends on the system that you are using. So include transactional, keep it as no. Right now I get my options back, right? So next tab here is bulk loader options. So it depends on your target system. So you can say bulk load check and keep the mode to append, and you can do that. So what it does is it tries to update multiple tables that are getting loaded from here. So if I have more than one table, and the condition for this bulk load is all of them should be present in the same target data store. And if you're trying to do a bulk load, you check this one. So these whatever the record that gets inserted into one table will be updated or gets inserted, or a bulk load happens into multiple tables. So just in case if there is a failure in one table, all the remaining tables also will fail because we are going with a bulk load mechanism. Then load trigger, right? So if you look at this, there are something like before trigger, after trigger on the Oracle side, or if you look at SAP side, you have something called as start routines and end routines, right? So before you actually do some transformation on the data, or before you process the data through some code, so it will do that activity first. So let us say I don't want plant information to be blank, so I put that in my preload command. So I'll get back to the load, this one. So here if you select this one and say insert after, right, you'll get an SQL command line. You can just go and give the name here, right, and then you can enter the value here. So what this will do here is it will go and first this will run what are the option that you give in the preload command. So first, when the data flow gets executed, the system will come and see if there are any options that you have given here. So it will go and check for that here, right? So once it is there, then it will execute this preload command, then it will pick the source and the target tables, and then it will utilize the transformation. So preload command is something like your start routine on SAP, where you will go and write a routine saying that just a second. So the system will go and first execute this preload command. So, and then it will go with the transformation, and then it will go with the postload command. So generally, you don't utilize something that you're already doing in the transformation. You use something that you don't use in the transformation in the preload command and postload command. So for example, I have a data set and I want to not even consider the plant column. If the plant column has a null value in that particular row, I don't even want to consider that row for my business purpose or to my business rules. So in this case, I will go and do a preload command saying that where my this thing is not null, right? My plant is not null. So it will go and avoid those records, not even before. So you can do that using a query transformation too, but that gets into your system cache, that does a calculation that utilizes your system resources. But if you do this here, it will even kick off those records even from getting into your system cache. And postload command that happens after the transformation, right? So you want to do a update statement. You can write SQL statements only. You can write a SQL statements here. So postload command is something like your end routines, where you can write something like set a particular column value. If it is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, you set that to ABCD. You can do some update statements, set statements here in the postload command that will go. And once the transformation is done and data gets converted, and in that data set, if you have some value which you don't want to be present in the target, so you can update that using a postload command. It does a push down operation onto the database, and it will do a performance, right? So from SAP side, I compared this with my start routine and end routines. preload commands and postload commands, but from an Oracle side, you also have something like before trigger and after trigger, right? So before you trigger this thing, you perform an activity, and after you trigger this one, and this happens, and once it is done, you go and do another set of activities. So this is comparable to that one. And load triggers, right, I just forgot about this. So it will initiate some process, right? So load triggers, it will go and trigger some activity. I'll just read about this. I'm not pretty sure like if I'm trying to tell correct thing or not. I'm probably confused. So please read about this on this one, load triggers, and you'll easily identify. So the entire documentation is available in help.sap.com/BODS, and there you go for a designer guide. So you get the complete information here, or you also have something called as a tutorial, right? So you get the information there. Probably once you read the document, you might understand that I'm just covering the major topics, but there is yet to know that there can be some more topics that even I need to learn and understand from there. So I always recommend you keep that as a baseline, for your proper knowledge on data services. So this is just an introduction to data services that I'm trying to do here. But if you want to know like how these things work, what is the back-end story, how everything works, the most of the knowledge again is from those documents and the real-time projects that I worked in. Right, so I encourage you to go and look into those documents. So this is our query transformation. Any questions on query transformation, so that we can go and proceed with the next transformation? So no questions. Sandeep, Bhargav, Jafar, Abdul, Venkatesh. All right, so if you have any question, you can ask me later. Right, so the next transformation that we'll look in the platform is row generation. All right, so Jafar, I think like, let me talk to these guys and try to understand where the gap is. I've been seeing your mails from last 3 days, and I was in an assumption that these guys are responding. So I just came to know that Ravi is out of town. If not, definitely would have responded by now. So I spoke to Naveen, and once the class is done, I'll call them up again, and I'll make sure that you get into the system and you get a complete access to that to practice. Right. So in some systems, generally what we do is we kind of restrict on the admin access for this tool, because initial days when we started these trainings and we gave the servers, we gave 100% access, and as we were teaching 100%, we gave 100% access to the people as well. Right, so you're saying you was trying but it did not allow. I did not get it, Jeff. Can you please explain this? Oh, sorry, sorry. So it says IJ is not allowed. So yeah, go ahead, Zafar. Sorry.
Okay, so that's fine. That's fine. Actually, I was asking, when you were showing these all properties, they are belonging to the target, right?
Yeah.
The query transform, or
so it's related to the target.
No.
Click on the target table. You have all these options here.
Oh, okay. So each and everything we should know, right? So
no, I don't know them. To tell you frankly, in one of the project I had to read about them. So I read about them because the customer was asking. But even without knowing this, you can go and complete it. Because
but if you want to know about this, so we can go for the manuals, right?
Yeah, exactly. You get the complete information there.
Okay, so that's the only thing, because they are very confusing, right?
They are not actually, Jafar, but if you, I mean, what I recommend you is to go to that, help.sap.com/BODS and open the technical guide. Just copy these options and type it there and try to read about them. You will find it pretty easy. So, it is how you go and optimize this one. So once you know the development, so that is the reason why I was insisting on the MS Paint diagram, saying that your data gets into the cache and then the calculations happen there. So before your data gets into the cache, your preload command gets executed. It kicks off 50% of the data. Then you have only less records in your cache, and that executes fast. And before it gets pushed onto the target table, you can use a query transformation to do some, update statements and all. But if you want to do a bulk upload onto your target table, you can do a post load command. So these, if you want, so generally you'll not get into a scenario where you will need them, but just in case if you want them, this is the place where you can go and work on them.
Okay, and one more question. If you want to use sub-queries, so we can use in the query like where you have a select tab?
Yep,
for example.
You can do that. So in the mapping tab, right? You can, in the where tab, you can go and do a subquery here. So you can do a subquery here proposing the join condition. So first that gets executed, then it goes to the major query. Right, on a column level, if you want to do a subquery activity, so you can give a subquery here in the mapping tab. So column level, you do it in the mapping tab, and table level, you do it in the where tab. You can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Right, thanks, Alfred. Right, so so Jafar, you can go back on mute and just.
I cannot. That's why I was asking. It's not allowing me. Even I cannot unmute or mute.
1 second.
Maybe you can do it only.
I mean, generally, everyone is given with an organizer access, so you should be in a position to mute and unmute. But yeah, I'll mute you as of now. But if you have any questions, please ping me, and I'll unmute you, and you can go ahead and discuss on that. All right. So the next one. So we saw case, we saw merge, map operation. We'll see that a little later because we need some more foundation on data services to understand that. So we saw query transformation. Next, we'll go and see a row generation transformation. So what is a row generation transformation? So any hints or any guesses? So as the name says, it generates a single row. So it is not something like an index here. So it creates a single row. I'll show you the difference. So the reason why we use this in real-time jobs, right? So this is your source transformation, which means it has a connector only on the right-hand side. It has no connector on the left-hand side. So this is my source transformation. And in a project, if I know my target metadata, right, I know my target table structure. So what I will do is I'll go use a query transformation, create my structure, employee number, integer, and in the mapping tab, just point it to null. Then name varchar 30, then point it to null. Location varchar 100 and point it to null. So I know my structure, but people hasn't given me an access to use this table on my technical design document and functional design document. I know my column names and all these things, but I did not get an access. So if this is a showstopper, There's no need for you to wait for that. All you can do is you create this structure using a row generation. There is no need to map anything, and point all these columns to null, and use a table. Connect it with your query transformation. Validate this, no errors found, and run this job. So your target table will be created, though you don't have your source table. So this is the main use of your row generation transformation. So it inserts a single row into a table and it creates. So creates a column field with int value starting at 0 and incremented by 1 at the end of the values you specify. So that is another definition of this one. But row generation generates a single row, and it will help you to create some target structures. So when, especially if you look at the SAP template jobs, so these template jobs will be created with row generation transformation. So once you get into the project, you just need to remove this row generation transformation and replace that with your actual table. Because to check the syntax, so you need the structure and everything, so you need a table as well. So this table is replaced by this one. So if you don't have this one, if you validate, it will throw an error saying that you don't have some source here. So this acts like a dummy source in creating the structures, right? So that is option number 1. And option number 2, row generation transformation and a combination with tables. So when I use this as a combination with the table and connect it with the target table, just remove the columns here. I select all the columns to my schema out and also the row ID. Right, so I'm not defining any join condition. I just pull all the columns here, validate, no errors found. And if I go and execute this one, so it generates a data set. It starts with 0, right? So a unique number is generated for all the records. Now let us go and make it as starting at 1 and increment by 1. Save it. Right. Rerun the job. Now you refresh the data. Now you see a single number generated, right? So this is how it works. So it kind of creates a single record set for this one. So this entire data set is considered to be a row ID 1. So in some scenarios, so how do I utilize this? So not required for you to mandatorily use this one, row generation. You can go with other approaches too. But in case you want to use this, what we can do is, if I want to apply 2 different rules on my data, and I want to validate first set and second set, so you need to generate 2 output sets, right? So what I will do is I change this one row count to 2 here, right? So in this case, what it will do, it will go and create 2 rows for each record. So the number of total records that are loaded into the target table should be 20. So primary key constraint, because this one column has a primary key as it tries to insert the duplicate. So uncheck the primary key and run the job again. Now if you look, 20 records are loaded. Refresh and you see for each and every record you have 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2. So if you look at the count of ones, you'll have 10 records, right? And if you look at the count of 2's, you'll have 10 records, which means it produces 2 data sets, right? One with the ID 1 and one with the ID 2. So what you can do, you can use this one in a where condition where saying that di row ID is equal to 1. You take that into one query transformation, apply one different business rule, and you take di row ID is equal to 1 into a different this one, and you apply one more business rule. So when you are trying out on a business rule, so if this one works or this one works, so you can split this into 2 data sets and you can work on that. So but if in case you are looking at creating an index kind of a column like the values that are present here, open your query transformation, create a new output column and populate that with the function generate row number by. Right, so there are 2 functions. One is generate row number, which will generate an index on the data. It will create a serial number 1 to 10 on the data. Now it is loaded. If I just go and refresh this one, remove filter and refresh, so now you see the index created on the data, 1 to 10 records. Right, so this is one approach. So if you look at the duration, so duration has 2's, 4's, 5's and 6. Right. So if I want to, or I have my promotion ID, I have duplicates in this one. So if I want to do a group by on row number, so this is the function generate row number by group. So you are doing a grouping by activity here. So if I'm doing that on my promotion ID, and before that the data needs to be sorted. So use a query transformation to sort the data and then perform a group by activity. So keep this in mind whenever you want to do use that function generate row number by group by. You need to sort the data on at least one column. The data should be sorted, not all the columns, but at least one is enough. Right now this data is sorted, and on top of that you are trying to utilize the function generate row number by group, right, on this particular promotion ID. So let me go and sort on promotion ID itself so that the data is good. Right, now save this and run this job, and now you see the difference on the data. Right, so for these 2's, right, so you have 4 2's here, so 3 2's, 1 2 3 is the group by. So you're doing a group by on the promotion ID. So you have only 1 3, so you have number 1 here, you have 2 4's, you have 1 and 2, you have 3 5's, so you have 1 2 and 3, you have a single 6 promotion ID, and you have a group by. So you can split them into buckets based on this one. So either a group by and a query transformation will do, or if you want to do a group by on a particular column, you can do split them into different buckets. Now you pull these buckets outside and you can apply the business rules here. All right, so it's just how you divide and think about it. So when you think about a particular requirement, you need to split that into the minute levels, right? So if someone of you attended some HANA demos or something, right? So there will be some activity called query parsing. So that queries parsing, what it will do is it will take a request and it will try to break it into the most possible subqueries, right? So most feasible subqueries. So one single query is broken into multiple subqueries, and based on that it will go and execute each and every subquery, and then it will try to consolidate the output. So that actually helps us to not miss anything, but also achieve it in a better way. So likewise, if you have any requirement on data services, you try to break that to the minute levels, granular level, and you see at this and try to understand what we can do, what we can achieve out of this, and then you'll definitely understand, okay, this way they have a roadblock here, we can take another way and achieve this. So it's just how we analyze our requirement and how we know about our transformations, right? So there's a combination of knowledge that we need to get, so more analytical skills and also our requirement, our understanding on these transformations. All right, so there was a request from Venkatesh to hold the class at 7:30 because he has got some other work. So we'll continue on the remaining transformations, SQL validation and SQL map, XML map tomorrow. And once we are done with this, we will go and continue with the integrated transformation. So if you have any questions for today's topics, please go ahead and ask me your questions. But Zafar, you can ping me if you want me to unmute. Right. So thank you. And if you have any questions, you can ask them tomorrow as well. Go through the recordings and, hope you guys are getting the recordings every day. If not, please let me know. I'll try to follow up with my staff and I'll ensure that you get them on time. And sorry for the inconvenience on the server activities. Ravi is out of town, so probably that could be one gap where, he should communicate with the server guy and provide the access details. So that could be one reason. So let me just talk to him and get this sorted out. Yeah, right. Thank you guys, and thanks for attending today's session. We'll catch up again tomorrow, and we'll talk about the integrated transformations too once we complete the platform transformations. So have a good night and good day. We'll see you tomorrow.